Chapter 21. The Warm Temperate Eastern Margin, China Type. Climate distribution. This type of climate is found on the eastern margins of continents in warm temperate latitudes, just outside the tropics, Fig. 144. It has comparatively more rainfall than the Mediterranean climate in the same latitudes, coming mainly in the summer. It is, in fact, the climate of most parts of China, a modified form of monsoonal climate. It is thus also called the temperate monsoon or China L/P of climate. In southeastern USA, bordering the Gulf of Mexico, continental heating in summer induces an inflow of air from the cooler Atlantic Ocean. Though less pronounced, the overall climatic features resemble those of the China type. It is sometimes referred to as the Gulf type of climate. In the southern hemisphere, this kind of climate is experienced along the warm, temperate eastern coastlands of all the three continents. In New South Wales with its eucalyptus forests, in Natal where cane sugar thrives, and in the maize belt of the Paraná-Paraguay-Uruguay basin. As the regions are influenced by the onshore trade winds all the year round, without any monsoon variations, the climate cannot be described as temperate monsoon. It is sometimes referred to as the VCD type of climate. Climate, the warm, temperate eastern margin climate, is typified by a WM moist minima, and a co-winter the mean monthly temperature varies between 40 degrees F and 78 degrees F, and is strongly modified by maritime influence. Occasionally, the penetration of cold air from the continental interiors may bring down the temperature to freezing point. Though frosts are rare, they occasionally occur in the colder interiors. For most of the time, it is pleasantly warm. The relative humidity is a little high in midsummer when the heat becomes oppressive and can be very trying to the white settlers, e.g. in Natal. Rainfall is more than moderate, anything from 25 inches to 60 inches. This is adequate for all agricultural purposes, and the warm, temperate eastern margin climate supports a wide range of crops. Areas which experience this climate are very Fig. 144 regions with a warm, temperate eastern margin climate, 155, densely populated. Another important feature is the fairly uniform distribution of rainfall throughout the year. There is rain every month, except in the interior of central China, where there is a distinct dry season. Rain comes thither from convectional sources or as orographic rain in summer, or from depressions in prolonged showers in winter. Local storms, e.g. typhoons and hurricanes, also occur. There is a good deal of variation in detail within the eastern margins, and it is essential to examine them by reference to specific areas where the local factors affect the climates. We shall subdivide them into three main types. 1. China type, central and north China, including southern Japan, temperate monsoonal. 2. The Gulf type, southeastern United States, slight monsoonal. 3. The Natal type, all the warm, temperate eastern margin, non-monsoonal areas of the southern hemisphere including Natal, eastern Australia and southern Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay and northern Argentina. 1. The China type. This is the most typical climate of the warm, temperate eastern margin. The great land mass of the Asiatic continent, with its mountainous interior, induces great pressure changes between summer and winter. Intense heating in the heart all Asia sets up a region of low pressure in summer, and the tropical Pacific airstream is drawn in as the rain-bearing South-L-Ast monsoon. Heavy precipitation occurs in most parts of China, decreasing inland, as illustrated in Fig. 145. The wettest months of Nanking arc in summer, with more than a third of the annual rainfall falling in June and July, 15.3 inches out of 42 inches, though the monsoon does not burst as suddenly, nor pour as heavily as in India. In winter, a steep pressure gradient is set up between the cold interiors of Mongolia and Bibina, and the warmer Pacific coastlands. The continental polar airstream flows outwards as the N.H.W. monsoon. Bill, CRLY cold pound Thu, is little lamb but considerable snow on the windward slopes of Shantung as the cold winds are warmed and moistened. In fact, less than 8.4 inches are recorded in Nanking during the cold season from October to February. Another characteristic feature of the China type of eastern margin climate is I. Lemperala graph of Nanking. There is a difference of 45 H between July and January, 36 Fi the north. The range is even greater, 55 degrees F in Iking and 54 F in Chang'an. In the warmer 156 south and along the coast, the temperature differences are much less, e.g. 28 degrees F. In Canton, 27 degrees F. In Swatow, and only 22 degrees P. In Hong Kong. Another climatic feature associated with the China-type old climate in southern China is the occurrence of typhoons, intense tropical cyclones that originate in the Pacific Ocean and move westwards to the coastlands bordering the South China Sea. They are most frequent in late summer, from July to September, and can be very disastrous. The winds blow with tremendous strength, the sky is overcast, and there are torrential downpours. As much as 24 inches in a day have been recorded, and hooding is widespread. In the Swatow typhoon of August 1922, the huge waves set up by the violent typhoon drowned as many as 50,000 inhabitants. 2. I.e. Gulf type. The Gulf Atlantic regions of the United States experience a type of climate similar to that of central China, except that the monsoonal characteristics are less well established. There is no complete seasonal wind reversal, for the pressure gradient between mainland America and the Atlantic Ocean is less marked, as can be seen from the graph in Fig. 145b. For Miami, Florida, the difference in temperature between midsummer, July, 82 degrees F, and midwinter, January, 68 degrees F, is only at 4 degrees F. The warm Gulf Stream and the onshore trade winds help to bring about this narrow range of temperature. Summers are warm and pleasant, Miami being an important holiday resort, and it rarely snows in winter. The annual rainfall is heavy with 59 inches in Miami and New Orleans, 52 inches in Montgomery, and 41 inches in Charleston. There is no distinct dry period, as in monsoon lands, and the abundant moisture has stimulated extensive cultivation of cotton and maize, in the cotton and corn belts, both of which are the world's leading areas for these crops. From the rainfall pattern in Fig. 145b, it is clear that there is a tendency towards a summer maximum, brought by the onshore trade winds which swing landwards from the Atlantic. The amount of rain is increased by the frequent thunderstorms in summer and by hurricanes in September and October. Some stations, e.g. Montgomery in Alabama, also show a secondary maximum in late winter when cyclonic activities are greatest. Sometimes, violent tornadoes occur due to intense local heating on land. Though these whirling storms follow only a narrow path in the Central Plain, Mississippi Basin, they leave behind a trail of destruction. 3. The natal type. There are 3 distinct areas on the eastern coasts of the southern continents, lying just south of the Tropic of Capricorn, which experience this type of climate. The narrowness 0, F the continents, and the dominance of maritime influence eliminate the monsoonal elements which characterize the corresponding climates of the northern hemisphere. The southeast trade winds bring about a more even distribution of rainfall throughout the year, as illustrated by the climatic graph for Sydney, Australia. It has a mean monthly precipitation of 4 inches, which is adequate for most agricultural activities. The annual amount of 48 inches is fairly representative of this climatic type in the southern hemisphere. The annual precipitation of Durban in Natal is 45 inches, and that of Asunción in Paraguay is 52 inches. The passage of Depression 5 across the southern edges of the warm, temperate eastern margins results in a slight autumn or winter maximum, typified by Sydney, Fig. 145 C, which has its wettest months in March, April, May, June, and July, the autumn-winter part of the year. The rain comes in prolonged showers. Much of the water seeps into the ground, and there is little runoff. So the regions are well suited to agriculture and are some of the best settled parts of the southern continents. Another feature to note is the small annual temperature range, without any really cold month. The annual range for Sydney is 19 degrees F, and the coldest month is 21 degrees F, above freezing. The range is smaller Lord Durban, only 13 degrees F. Ith July, the coldest month at 63 degrees F. In Asunción, it is even less. The range is I57, only 8 degrees F. And the climate is pleasantly warm all the time. However, the southern continents also have violent local storms, which, though not as severe as the typhoon, hurricane, or tornado, are nevertheless quite significant. The southerly burster, a violent cold wind blowing along the coast of New South Wales, leads to a sudden fall in temperature. It is most frequent in spring and summer. The corresponding cold wind in Argentina and Uruguay is the pampero, which is often accompanied by thunder and lightning besides the rain and dust. In southeastern Africa, a hot, dry wind called the Borg wind comes down from the interior plateau. It is comparable to the Fohn or Chinook and brings unpleasantly high temperatures and oppressive weather. Natural vegetation, the eastern margins of warm, temperate latitudes have a much heavier rainfall than either the western margins or the continental interiors, and thus have a luxuriant vegetation. The lowlands carry both evergreen broad-leaved forests and deciduous trees quite similar to those of the tropical monsoon forests. On the highlands are various species of conifers, such as pines and cypresses, which are important softwoods. As the perennial plant growth is not checked by either a dry season, as in the Mediterranean, or a cold season, as in the cool temperate regions, conditions are well suited to a rich variety of plant life, including grass, ferns, lianas, bamboos, palms, and forests. The well-distributed rainfall all the year round makes the regions look green at all times. It is interesting to note that the warm, temperate eastern margins are the homes of a number of valuable limber species. In eastern Australia, the most important are eucalyptus trees, with scanty foliage and thick fern undergrowth. Some of the eucalyptus are very tall, over 250 feet, and they make hardy timber. The Australian Alps of Victoria and the Blue Mountains of New South Wales have great reserves of temperate eucalyptus forests that make up part of the timber exports of Australia. From the forests of southeastern Brazil, eastern Paraguay, northeastern Argentina come valuable warm temperate timbers such as the Paraná pine and the quebracho, axbreaker, an extremely hard wood used for tanning, and wild yerba mate trees, from which the leaves are gathered for making Paraguay tea. Today, large yerba mate plantations have been established to produce Paraguay tea, an increasingly important export item of Paraguay. In Natal, the 158 warm Mozambique current encourages heavy PRCU precipitation along the coast, and many species of PRM trees thrive. The highlands yield extensive forests of chestnuts, ironwood, and blackwoods. An unusual occupation is the commercial cultivation of VV, TTC trees in plantations for tanning extracts and for use in Natal's coal mines as pit props. The forests of China and southern Japan also have considerable economic value and include oak, camphor, camellia, and magnolia. Unfortunately, the tremendous population pressure in the two countries has caused much of the original forest to be cleared for fuel or crop cultivation. Deforestation has resulted in many barren hill slopes that are still feeling the impact of soil erosion. The Gulf states of USA have lowland deciduous forests. The trees grow close together with thick undergrowth and leafy branches. Walnut, oak, hickory, and maple are some of the more common species, while in the more sandy regions grow pines. Much of the forest cover has given way to the cultivation of subtropical crops like cotton, maize, and fruits. Economic development, the warm, temperate eastern margins are the most productive parts of the middle latitudes. There is adequate rainfall, no prolonged drought, and the cold season is warm enough for most crops to survive. Thus the growing season is almost continuous, though summer is the busiest part of the farming year. Monsoon China, together with southern Japan and other parts of the eastern margin climatic zone, accounts for almost a third of the world population. Food has to be raised to feed the teeming population. The hills are terraced, fields are irrigated, and agriculture is extended to the limits of production. It is no exaggeration to say that the temperate monsoon lands are the most intensively tilled parts of the earth. Besides, the widespread cultivation of maize and cotton in the corn and cotton belts of USA, fruit and tobacco are also grown. Rice, tea, and mulberries are extensively grown in monsoon China. Elsewhere are found other products of economic importance, e.g. cane sugar in Natal, coffee and maize in South America, and dairying in New South Wales and Victoria. Let us now examine some of the regions more closely. Farming in monsoon China. Undoubtedly, this is the world's greatest rice growing area. A third all the world's rice is grown in China, though the huge population, all 750 million, leaves very little for export. In normal years, imports of rice and terraced land for rice farming in Japan, other food grains are essential. The Chinese peasants raise wet paddy, or swamp rice, in flooded fields that call for endless hard labor for the greater part of the year. It is said that nowhere else is there so much manual labor devoted to raise a food crop that gives so little economic return. Farming is usually on a subsistence basis. Despite increasing mechanization in paddy cultivation, very few farmers actually make use of new machines because they are expensive and may be impractical in some areas. The only progress that has been made is towards double or treble cropping, which has increased the annual total rice production. When compared with the rapid population growth of the rice-eating nations, the increased production has in no way relieved the critical food problem of monsoon Asia. Furthermore, milled rice, which forms the staple food of the Orient, is a seriously deficient diet. The people are therefore not only inadequately fed, also physically undernourished. Monsoon China has all the ideal conditions for paddy cultivation: a warm climate, moderately wet throughout the year, and extensive lowlands with fertile moisture-retentive alluvial soil, which, if necessary, can be easily irrigated. The land has been tilled from generation to generation, and yet there is little deterioration in soil fertility. The muddy irrigation water from the river basins is silty and constantly brings new soil to the fields. The water is greatly enriched during floods, though these are far less frequent now, with the improvement made in flood control by the communist regime. In practice, the Chinese peasants add all kinds of organic wastes to enrich their fields. Rice straw, ashes, clippings, animal dung, refuse, and last but not least, human manure. The most intensively farmed areas are the basins of the Sikiang, Yangtze Kiang, and Huanghe, which are also the most densely peopled areas. The eastern coastlands are equally important. As the flat lands are insufficient for rice cultivation, farmers move up the hill slopes and grow paddy on terraced uplands. The artificial terraces retain the excess water as it flows down the slope. Besides rice, the other important crops are tea, grown for home consumption, and mulberry leaves gathered for feeding silkworms, though sericulture is declining. 2. Agriculture in the Gulf states. Agriculture in the Gulf states of America differs from that of monsoon China, though they have a similar climate. Lack of population pressure and the urge to export make rice cultivation a relatively unimportant occupation. It is grown only in a few areas in the southern coastlands of the Mississippi Delta. Americans are bread eaters, and one can well imagine how insignificant is rice in the economy of the Gulf states. The most important crops are corn, cotton, and tobacco. Corn. The chief food crop raised is in fact corn or maize. The humid air, the sunny summer, and the heavy showers suit the crop well. It is grown right from the Gulf Coast to the Midwest south of the Great Lakes, with the greatest concentration in the corn belt of Nebraska, Iowa, Indiana, and Ohio. The region accounts for more than half the world's production of corn, but only 3% of the world's export. This is because most of the corn is used for fattening animals, mostly cattle and pigs. Many farmers do not harvest the corn, but instead allow the cattle or pigs to hog the corn down in the field itself. The fattened animals are then sold to the meat plants in Chicago and Cincinnati to be slaughtered and processed into corned beef or frozen and chilled beef. Very little corn is consumed as a staple food in America, though the cereal originated in America as the food crop of the native Indian people. Apart from its ease of cultivation, in respect of soil, climatic, and labor requirements, corn's most outstanding feature is its prolific Roman 6 JD. It gives almost twice as much food, mainly starch, per acre as wheat or other cereals. This explains 159 why it is so widely cultivated in both the warm, temperate, and the tropical latitudes. Cotton. Of the cash crops grown in the Gulf states, none is comparable with cotton. In the Deep South, the fiber is so vital to the economic well-being of the Southerners that cotton is king. It shapes the destiny of the Southern states, being directly responsible for their trade, prosperity, and politics. In the early days of America, millions of Negroes were brought from Africa as salve labor or the cotton plantations, because the climate was too hot for the white settlers to harvest the cotton themselves. Although slavery was abolished in the 19th century, the Negroes are still poor and underprivileged. This is the cause of the present problems between the blacks and the whites in America. The Gulf type of climate is undoubtedly the best for cotton growing. Its long, hot growing season, with 200 days frost-free and a moderately high temperature of about 75 degrees F, permits the crop to grow slowly and mature within 6 months. Like most fibers, cotton likes ample rain, and an annual precipitation of around 40 inches is essential. In fact, an adequate moisture supply coming from frequent light showers with bright sunshine between them gives the highest yield. Fine quality cotton also comes from irrigated fields in the drier west, provided sufficient water is supplied during the growing season. The cotton belt is thus limited by the 20-inch isohyet. USA is not the only important cotton producer. India's largest industry is cotton textiles. Here yarn is being processed at the Birla Mills New Delhi Press Information Bureau, India on the west, and 1TF. Isotherm in the north, within which there are at least 200 days without frost. In the very south, in the Gulf lands, THC heavy rainfall damages the lint. This area is therefore less suitable for cotton and is devoted to citrus fruits, cane sugar, and market gardening, as in Florida. The commercial cultivation of cotton is now concentrated only in the most favorable areas, which are the Mississippi flood plains, the clay Atlantic coastlands of Georgia and South Carolina, the black prairies of Texas, and the red prairies of Oklahoma. Fig. 146 shows the chief cotton areas. Generally speaking, the best cotton comes from the maritime districts where the sea breezes and the warming effect of the ocean are most strongly felt. The sea island cotton grown in the islands off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina is long stapled. The fibers are between 1.5 and 2.3 inches in length and is the best in the world. Further inland, the staples are shorter, about an inch long. This is typical of the bulk of the American cotton. Besides the problem of soil exhaustion and erosion caused by prolonged cotton cultivation, THC most dreaded enemy of the cotton belt is the boll weevil. The pest multiplies so rapidly that a pair of boll weevils, if left unchecked, will breed over 10 million grubs within a single season. The pest is responsible for the westward migration of the cotton belt. When it first appeared in 1892 in the eastern Licey, it attacked the sea island cotton. Aerial spraying with insecticides and the thorough burning of old cotton stalks have been found effective in eliminating the boll weevil. C. Tobacco. Another interesting crop closely associated with the Gulf type of climate is tobacco, which incidentally is also a native crop of America, though it is cultivated in many parts of the world, and the finished products range from Turkish tobacco to Havana cigars and Malaysian cheroots. There is none so universally known as the Virginia tobacco. It is the raw material from which most of the world's cigarettes are blended to suit the smoker's taste. The humid atmosphere, the warmth, and the well-drained soils of all the Gulf states enable tobacco to be successfully cultivated in many of the eastern states of USA, e.g. Virginia, Maryland, Georgia, North and South Carolina, Kentucky, and Tennessee. No less than half the tobacco that enters international trade comes from these states. Regardless of the views that doctors and school teachers may hold, cigar and cigarette smoking has long been a universal habit that cannot be dispensed with. It is the basis of an industry and provides, through duty, a valuable source of income to the government. 3. Crop cultivation in the eastern margins of the Southern Hemisphere. A close look at the economic map of the Southern Hemisphere will at once reveal the agricultural importance of its eastern margins, which experience a natal-type hot climate. The warm, moist summers and frost-free winters not only support many crops, but also animals. In the coastlands of Natal, cane sugar is the dominant crop, followed by cotton and tobacco in the interior. Recent expansion of these crops has come about with improved irrigation. Maize is extensively cultivated for use both as mealie, an important food item, law Africans, and silage, an animal fodder for cattle rearing. But in comparison with the maize yield of the Corn Belt of USA, the African yield is rather low, often only half. Improvements can be made if farmers attempt some form of crop rotation to arrest the rapid rate of soil exhaustion in regions of maize monoculture. Scientific manuring and better methods of cultivation would raise yields. In South America, where rainfall is less than 40 inches, there is much grassland on which many cattle and sheep are kept for meat, wool, and hides. It is the continuation of the Argentinian pampas. The mild winters mean that THC animals can be kept out of doors all the time. The extensive natural pastures provide valuable forage for both cattle and sheep. The products from these two kinds, all domesticated animals, account for over three-quarters of the annual exports of Uruguay. The remaining exports come mainly from U, and Fax further north in southern Brazil. The rainfall increases to more than 40 inches and forest gradually replaces grass. Here the important occupations are the cultivation of verba mate, Paraguay tea, and the lumbering of Araucaria or Parana pine. Cattle and sheep are reared, and maize and cane sugar are grown. In eastern Australia, the moist trade winds bring heavy rainfall to the coastal districts, and these are thickly wooded. Giant eucalyptus trees rise one above the other right up the eastern highlands. But with the influx of European immigrants, much of the forest has been cleared for settlement, and dairying the eastern margin of New South Wales was, in fact, the earliest part of the continent to be colonised, beginning with Port Jackson, the present site of Sydney. The region is now the chief source of Australia's milk, butter and cheese, besides cotton, cane sugar and maize, which are increasingly grown in the north. Chapter 22, The Cool Temperate Western Margin, British Type Climate. Distribution. The cool temperate western margins are under the permanent influence of the westerlies all round the year. They are also regions of much cyclonic activity, typical of Britain, and are thus said to experience the British type of climate. From Britain, the climatic belt stretches far inland into the lowlands of northwest Europe, including such regions as northern and western France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Denmark, western Norway, and also northwestern Iberia. There is so much oceanic influence on both the temperature and the precipitation that the climate is also referred to as the Northwest European maritime climate. In North America, the high Rockies prevent the onshore westerlies from penetrating far inland, and the British type of climate is confined mainly to the coastlands of British Columbia. In the southern hemisphere, the climate is experienced in southern Chile, Tasmania, and most parts of New Zealand, particularly in South Island. The surrounding large expanses of water have increased the maritime nature of the climate here. Fig. 147. Climate temperature. The mean annual temperatures are usually between 40 degrees F and 60 degrees F. The warmest month in London, as illustrated in the temperature graph of London Fig. 148 A, is 63 degrees F, and the coldest month is just around 40 degrees F, thus giving an annual temperature range of only 24 degrees F, which is comparatively small for its latitude, 51 degrees N. Summers are, in fact, never very warm. Monthly temperatures of over 65 degrees F, even in midsummer, are rare. Heat waves, as they are popularly called, that is a short spell of warm summer days, are a welcome feature in such cool, temperate latitudes where people do not often see enough of the sun. The climate is ideal for maximum comfort and mental alertness. People can work for long hours without feeling drowsy and lethargic as they do in the tropics. There appears to be some direct relationship between climate and man's output of work. It is no wonder that the cool, temperate regions are some of the most advanced parts of the world. Winters are abnormally mild, and no stations actually record mean January temperatures below freezing point in northwestern Europe. This is attributable to the warming effect of the warm North Atlantic drift and the prevalence of the southwesterlies. It has been estimated that the marine stations of the region are almost 25 degrees F, warmer in January than corresponding stations of the same latitude in the interiors. Night frosts do occur, and snow falls in winter too. Sometimes, 164 unusual cold spells, caused by the invasion of cold polar continental air from the interiors, may hit the western margins for a number of weeks. The climate of the maritime regions as a whole may be described as equable, with moderately warm summers and fairly mild winters. It is quite apparent from Fig. 148b of Hobart, Tasmania, that the British type of climate in the southern hemisphere is even more equable. Lack of continental land masses in Tasmania, New Zealand, and southern Chile means that extremes of temperature are not likely at all. Hobart has midsummer temperatures of not more than 62 degrees F. While its coldest month in July, winter in the southern hemisphere is barely below 46 degrees F. The annual temperature range is reduced to only 6 degrees F, which is unusual for the middle latitudes. This is, in fact, the average figure for all the maritime stations in the southern continents, where insularity overrides all other factors. The annual ranges of other southerly stations are Dunedin 15 degrees F, Christchurch 18 degrees F, Valdivia 14 degrees F, and Punta Arenas 17 degrees F. The last two stations are in southern Chile. The oceanic influences not only keep the winters very mild, but also keep the summers eerole. Some geographers have described these southerly islands as the favoured isles, which has much truth in it. Precipitation. The British type of climate has adequate rainfall throughout the year, with a tendency towards a slight winter or autumn maximum from cyclonic sources. Since the rain-bearing winds come from the west, the western margins have the heaviest rainfall. The amount decreases eastwards, with increasing distance from the sea. Though both the quoted stations, London and Hobart, have 24 inches all precipitation a year, the actual amount varies quite considerably from place to place. Relief can make great differences in the annual amount. For example, the western slopes of the Southern Alps of South Island. New Zealand have as much as 200 inches of rainfall, mainly orographic rain, while the Canterbury Plain, in the rain shadow area, has as little as 25 inches. Similarly, the Lake District of Britain has well over 100 inches, in contrast to only 24 inches in East Anglia. It is therefore difficult to say how much annual rainfall is typical of the British type of climate. Perhaps a useful guide would be to confine ourselves to lowland regions, which normally have 20 to 40 inches a year, e.g. 23 inches in Paris, 28 inches in Dublin, 33 inches in Seattle, and 37 inches in Dunedin. Generally, western coastal stations are wetter. Vancouver has 60 inches of rain, Bergen 84 inches, and Valdivia 105 inches. They are exceeded in the annual amount only by the highland stations, as mentioned earlier. The seasons. As in other temperate regions, there are 4 distinct seasons in the British climate type. Light snowfalls can be expected in the winter months, normally only of short duration, because of the comparatively mild weather. But over the highlands, such as the Scandinavian mountains and the American Rockies, snowfall is heavy and feeds the mountain glaciers that move down the valleys. Winter is the season, all cloudy skies, loggy and misty mornings, and many rainy days from the passing depressions. Out at sea, gales are frequent and can be dangerous to shipping. Spring is the driest and the most refreshing season, when people emerge from the depressing winter to see everything becoming green again. This is followed by the long, sunny summer. Sunbathers, picnickers and sightseers are out in the open to enjoy themselves. With the roar of gusty winds and the fall of golden leaves, autumn is ushered in, and the cycle repeats itself. This type of climate, with its 4 distinct seasons, is something that is conspicuously absent in the tropics. Natural vegetation. The natural vegetation of this climatic type is deciduous forest. The trees shed their leaves in the cold season. This is an adaptation law protecting themselves against the winter snow and frost. Shedding begins in autumn, the fall season, during which the leaves fall and are scattered by the winds. The golden brown leaves and the naked branches present a very interesting scene. When they are in leaf, the deciduous trees have typical rounded outlines with thick trunks and outspreading branches that yield valuable temperate hardwood. Fig. 149. Some of the more common species include oak, elm, ash, birch, beech, poplar, and hornbeam. In the wetter areas grow willows, alder, and aspen. Elsewhere are found other species, e.g. chestnut, sycamore, maple, and lime. Unlike the equatorial forests, the deciduous trees occur in pure stands and have greater lumbering value from the commercial point of view. The open nature of the forests with sparse undergrowth is useful in logging operations. Easy penetration means much cost can be saved in the movement of the logs. The deciduous hardwoods are excellent for both fuel and industrial purposes. In Tasmania, the temperate eucalypts are also extensively felled for the lumbering industry. Higher up the mountains in the Scandinavian Highlands, the Rockies, Southern Andes, and the Southern Alps of New Zealand, the deciduous trees are generally replaced by the comlers, which can survive a higher altitude, a lower temperature, and poorer soils. Economic development, a very large part of the deciduous woodlands have been cleared for fuel, timber, or agriculture. The dense population necessitates the removal of the lowland forests, particularly the plough. In Britain, there is only 4% of the original forest left. A large range of cereals, fruits and root crops are raised, mainly for home consumption rather than for export. Northwest Europe, which includes some of the most crowded parts of the globe, has little surplus for export. It is, in fact, a net importer of food crops, especially wheat from almost all parts of the wheatlands for bread making and other food items. The region differs from many others in its unprecedented industrial advancement. The countries are concerned in the production of machinery, chemicals, textiles, and other manufactured articles rather than agriculture, fishing, or lumbering, though these activities are well represented in all the countries. Fishing is particularly important in Britain, Norway, and British Columbia, since the manufacturing aspect of industrial geography will be dealt with in much greater detail in Chapter 27. We shall deal here with the agricultural development of the region. 1. Market gardening. Though market gardening is practiced throughout the world wherever there is a large urban population, nowhere else is it so highly specialized as in Northwest Europe. Several factors account for this. All the northwestern European countries, Britain, France, West German, Benelux and Denmark, are highly industrialized and have high population densities. There are more towns and cities than in other continents despite its small size. It is understandable that the demand for fresh vegetables, green salads, eggs, meat, nulk, and nuts fig. 149 some deciduous trees, 165 will be tremendous. The city dwellers, the factor, workers, and the civil servants who make up the bulk of the urban population consume large quantities of fresh provisions daily, and these must be provided by local farmers if freshness of the produce is to be ensured. In northwestern Europe, intensive market gardening is carried out in many specialized areas, e.g. the Vales of York and Evesham in the United Kingdom, where climatic, soil, and other factors best suit this form of agriculture. Farms are normally small, located near large cities or industrial areas. Soils, whether silty, loamy, or podzolic, are carefully maintained at a high degree of fertility. Very selective fertilizers are applied depending on the type of crops in cultivation. Farming is carried out intensively, aiming at high yield and maximum cash returns. As the crops are perishable, a good network of transport is indispensable. The produce such as lettuces, cabbages, cauliflowers, tomatoes, onions, peas, and fruits are seldom shipped, but conveyed by high-speed conveyances such as trucks or vans. Perhaps a more appropriate term to use is truck farming, which is commonly used in the United States. In a few instances, warmer weather or better soils, as in southwest England, Devon and Cornwall, can also induce farmers to take to market gardening despite their remoteness from the more populated districts. Early vegetables, early potatoes and tomatoes reach London from the Canary Islands, the Channel Islands, and Trom Brittany in northwest France. Similarly, bulbs and flowers from the polderlands of the Netherlands and eggs, bacon and other dairy products from Denmark are sent to most of the major industrial centers of Europe in almost perfect condition for household consumption. The horticultural industry in the Netherlands is so highly specialized that Dutch tulips and bulbs are flown by the KLM, Dutch Airlines, to Rome, Paris, Zurich, and London. In Australia, high-speed boats ply across the Bass Strait daily from Tasmania to rush vegetables, tomatoes, apples, and beans to most of the large cities in mainland Australia. It is no wonder the Australians nicknamed Tasmania the Garden State. 2. Mixed farming. Throughout Britain and northwestern Europe, farmers practice both arable farming, cultivation of crops on ploughed land, and pastoral farming, keeping animals on grass meadows. Crops may be raised for cash sales or as fodder for cattle or sheep. The proportion of crops and animals in the farm at any time depends to a great extent on the type of soil, the price of the cereals, and the demand for animals and animal products. The farmers also plant a few fruit trees, apples, pears, plums, rear pigs, keep poultry, mainly for eggs, and even have bees for honey. There is such a great variety in the farms that the term mixed farming is most aptly applied. Amongst the cereals, wheat is the most extensively grown, almost entirely for home consumption because of the very dense population in northwestern Europe at one time. Some of the European countries, France, Denmark, and the Netherlands, used to be wheat exporters, but the keen competition from the new wheat lands of the New World forced most of the farmers to divert their interest to other more profitable uses of their land, such as market gardening, dairying, or an intensive form of mixed farming. With the rise of industry, more arable farms are being devoured by factories, and wheat is now a net import item in Europe. The next most important cereal raised in the mixed farm is barley. The better quality barley is sold to the breweries for beer making or whiskey distilling and is raised preferably in the drier areas. Malting barley is thus grown in southeastern Britain near the hop-growing area. Hops are also used for beer, where rainfall is less than 30 inches. On heavy soils or wetter regions, barley is grown mainly as an animal fodder, sometimes mixed with oats as dredge corn. Both are raised in crop rotations with a leguminous crop, beans or clover, and a root crop, turnips or beet sugar. The most important animals kept in the mixed farm are cattle. Northwestern Europe was originally the home of many world-renowned cattle breeds, e.g. Guernsey, Ayrshire and Friesian, which are first-class dairy cattle for milk production. The countries bordering the North Sea, Britain, Denmark, the Netherlands, are some of the most advanced dairying countries where cattle are kept on a scientific and intensive basis. Europeans drink more milk than anybody else, except the New Zealanders. In the United Kingdom, a person drinks almost a pint of milk a day. From milk, other important dairy products are derived. These are butter, cheese, cream, and skimmed milk or casein, a raw material for making plastics, paper, and drugs. The temperate western margin type of climate is almost ideal law-intensive dairying. Cheese is a specialized product of the Netherlands, from Edam and Gouda. From Denmark comes high-quality butter, of which she ranks with New Zealand as one of the world's greatest exporters. In Devon and Cornwall, plotted 166 an English farm. Notice, the well-wooded countryside central office of information, London cream is made, which is less perishable than fresh milk. It can be sent over longer journeys without being contaminated. The Swiss have also made excellent use of their alpine pastures for keeping dairy cattle. Fresh milk is converted into various forms of condensed or evaporated milk and exported around the world for baby feeding, confectionery, ice cream, and chocolate making. Besides dairying, some cattle are kept as beef cattle, e.g. the Hereford and Aberdeen Angus, but their numbers are very small in comparison with those of Argentina or Australia, where meat production is the primary concern. The high rate of beef consumption in Europe, about 40 lb. a year per head of population in the United Kingdom, necessitates large imports of frozen and chilled beef. In the mixed farms in Europe, farmers keep cattle also with a view of enriching their fields with the animal dung. The poultry act as scavengers that feed on the leftovers from root crops and dairy processes. In this way, Denmark is able to export large quantities of bacon from pigs that are fed on the skimmed milk, a byproduct of butter making. Fresh chickens, eggs from the farms, and more recently, from large poultry yards also form part of the export products of Denmark. Sheep are kept both for wool and mutton. In British Columbia, mixed farming is restricted on all backslash to the most favored parts of the western lowlands, the region being so mountainous and thickly forested. 3. Sheep rearing. This is well developed in some parts of the British type of climate. Britain is the home of some of the best-known sheep breeds, e.g. Leicesters. Lincolns and Southtons, which are dual purpose, noted for mutton as well as wool, with the downloaded from Shashidthaka 23 blog, com 167, a sheep station near Hawke's Bay, New Zealand. NZ High Commission. Malaysia. Greater pressure exerted on land by increased urbanization, industrialization and agriculture. Sheep rearing is being pushed further and further into the less favored areas. The principal sheep areas are on foothills, well-drained uplands, chalk and limestone scarplands, and the light, sandy coasts. In Britain, the major sheep areas are the Pennines, Swaledale breeds, Scottish Highlands, the Blackface, the RSN degrees Uth V, Andes, CHC Vile, the WCLSH Mountains, Black Welsh, and the scarplands of southeastern T. England, Romney Marsh. Britain was once an exporter of wool, and her woolen textiles industry began with local Pennine wool. But today, with a greater population and a more intensive use of her better agricultural land, she has neither surplus wool nor mutton for export. She has become instead an important exporter of British pedigree animals to the newer sheep lands of the world. This is equally true of other northwestern European sheep areas, in which industrialization has effectively altered the pattern of land use. In the southern hemisphere, sheep rearing is the chief occupation of New Zealand, with its greatest concentration in the Canterbury Plain. It has been estimated that for every New Zealander there are 20 sheep. Many factors have led to this unprecedented growth during the past century, including extensive meadows, a mild temperate climate, well-drained level ground, scientific animal breeding, and last, but most vital, the development of refrigeration, which enables frozen or chilled Canterbury lamb and Corriedale mutton to reach every corner of the globe. Though New Zealand has only 4% of the world's sheep population, it accounts for 2/3 of the world's mutton exports and 1/6 of world wool exports. In Tasmania and southern Chile, sheep 168 rearing has always been a predominant occupation, with surplus sheep products for the international trade. 4. Other agricultural activities. Apart from market gardening and mixed farming, which have been singled out for greater individual treatment, the British type of climate also supports a number of other important crops. Amongst the food crops, potatoes feature prominently in the domestic economy of the cool, temperate regions. It is the staple food in supplementing wheat or bread for millions of people. In terms of starch, it yields far more food than any cereals and can be cultivated over a wide range of climatic and soil types. But normally, a cooler and more northerly latitude is preferred because the crop will be less prone to the attack of blight, a virus disease that is particularly infectious in warm and humid countries. Since the introduction of the crop by the Spanish conquerors from the Andean states of Peru and Bolivia in the 16th century, potato growing has spread far and wide in Europe. Today, almost 2/3 of the world's annual production of potatoes comes from Europe, of which Poland, Germany, France, and United Kingdom are the major producers. Besides its principal use as a substitute for bread, large quantities of potatoes are also consumed as animal fodder and as a source of industrial alcohol. Another interesting crop that is found almost exclusively in northwestern Europe, including European USSR and parts of USA, is beet sugar. The need for such a crop was greatly felt during the Napoleonic Wars around 1800, when military blockades caused a scarcity of sugar. High prices of imported tropical sugar, from cane sugar, drove many governments of the temperate lands to think seriously about the vital importance of securing a certain amount of self-sufficiency in their sugar requirements. The first beet sugar factory in Europe was established in 1801. Farmers were given subsidies, aids, or allowances to induce them to devote at least part of their farm to the crop. Since then, beet sugar has become an integral part of many European farms. It is grown thither on special beet farms for cash sales or in conjunction with cereals in crop rotation. One beet is crushed for sugar, and the green tops are used as animal fodder. The crop thrives best in the warmer and drier east of Britain and in mainland Europe. The highest sugar yield is obtained when the autumn is both dry and sunny. Attempts to grow the crop in the colder north or the wetter west have so far been rather unsuccessful, except in some sheltered localities. In Britain, most of the beet Yuga factories are located in the Fens and East Anglia. Chapter 23. The Cool Temperate Continental, Siberian. Climate Distribution. The cool temperate continental, Siberian climate is experienced only in the northern hemisphere, where the continents within the high latitudes have a broad east-west spread, Fig. 150. On its poleward side, it merges into the Arctic tundra of Canada and Eurasia at around the Arctic Circle. Southwards, the climate becomes less severe and fades into the temperate steppe climate dealt with in Chapter 19. The predominant vegetation of this Siberian or subarctic type of climate is evergreen coniferous forest. It stretches in a great, continuous belt across North America, Europe, and Asia. The greatest single band of the coniferous forest is the taiga, a Russian word for coniferous forest, in Siberia. In Europe, the countries that have a similar type of climate and forest are mainly in northern Europe, Sweden and Finland. There are small amounts of natural coniferous forest due to high altitude in Germany, Poland, Switzerland, Austria, and other parts of Europe. In North America, this subarctic belt stretches from Alaska across Canada into Labrador and is found on the high Rocky Mountains farther south. The Siberian climate is conspicuously absent in the southern hemisphere because of the narrowness of the southern continents in the high latitudes. The strong oceanic influence reduces the severity of the winter, and coniferous forests are found only on the mountainous uplands of southern Chile, New Zealand, Tasmania, and southeast Australia. Climate temperature. The climate of the Siberian type is characterized by a bitterly cold winter of long duration and a cool, brief summer. Spring and autumn are merely brief transitional periods, the isotherm of 50 degrees F. For the warmest month forms the poleward boundary of the Siberian climate, and the winter months are always below freezing. The stations chosen to illustrate this type of climate are Moscow, in continental Europe, and Churchill, in northern Canada, bordering Hudson Bay. The coldest month in Moscow is January with 12 degrees F, 20 degrees below freezing point. The warmest month, July, is as high as 66 degrees F. Thus there is an annual range of 54 F, which is common in the Siberian type of Fig. 150, the cool temperate coniferous forest climate. In comparison, the annual temperature range for Churchill is even higher, Arkachemi 73 degrees F, 19 degrees F, in January, and 54 degrees F, in July. This is due to the more northerly position of Churchill. The extremes of temperature are so great in Siberia that it is often referred to as the cold pole of the Earth. Some of the lowest temperatures in the world are recorded in Verkhansk, 68 degrees N, 3 degrees E, and only 330 feet in altitude, where 90 degrees F was once recorded. This is, in fact, 170 degrees F, colder than Kuala Lumpur. It is almost unimaginable. In North America, the extremes are less severe because of the continent's lesser east-west stretch. The lowest midwinter means in the cold Mackenzie Valley are not lower than -70 degrees F. With such low temperatures in the cold season, heavy snowfall can be expected. Frosts occur as early as August, and by September lakes and ponds are already icebound. All over Russia, nearly all the rivers are frozen. The number of days in which the rivers are frozen increases from south to north. In normal years, the Volga is ice-covered for about 150 days, while those further north, e.g. the lower courses of the Ob, Lena, and Yenisei, are ice-covered for more than 210 days or 7 months. Occasionally cold, northerly polar winds such as the blizzards of Canada and Buran of Eurasia blow violently at 50 mph or more and at a temperature of 50 degrees F, below freezing point. The powdery snowflakes are blown around in the lower atmosphere and visibility is greatly reduced. Conditions are so unbearable that Siberia is very sparsely populated, but it is gradually being developed. Precipitation. The interiors of the Eurasian continent are so remote from maritime influence that annual precipitation cannot be high. Generally speaking, a total of 15 to 25 inches is typical of the annual precipitation of this subarctic type of climate. It is quite well distributed throughout the year, with a summer maximum from convectional rain when the continental interiors are greatly heated, midsummer temperatures of 60 degrees to 75 degrees F. are quite usual, and the maximum recorded in Siberia is a real surprise, 102 degrees F. In winter, the precipitation is in the form of snow, as mean temperatures are well below freezing all the time. The precipitation rhythm can best be grasped from the two representative stations chosen in Fig. 151A and 151B. Moscow, with an annual precipitation of 21 inches, has most of the rainfall concentrated in the warmer months, June-September. There is no month without some form of moisture, in a region where overall temperature is low. Evaporation is not rapid, and the relative humidity is high. This small amount of precipitation is adequate for tree growth. The conifers, which require little moisture and transpire an equally small amount, are best suited to this type of subarctic climate. In Churchill, Fig. 151b, the annual precipitation is just 16 inches with a distinct summer maximum. 171. The total precipitation of the Siberian climate is determined by such factors as altitude, latitude, proximity to the poles, amount of exposure to influences by westerlies. On western parts of consents, temperate monsoons, on the eastern parts comments, and the penetration of the cyclones. European USSR usually has more than 20 inches of annual precipitation because of some oncoming westerlies, and the periodic penetration of cyclones. Eastern Siberia also has over 20 inches, being moistened by the SC monsoon from the Pacific Ocean. Central Siberia and Canada have about 15 inches due to their continentality and lack of sea influence polewards and southwards. The amount again decreases to only 12 inches or less. The cold, dry air of the north is incapable of holding moisture, and in the south are the semi-arid steppes. Snow falls nearly everywhere in USSR in the long, cold winter. The amount varies from place to place. It is heaviest in the northern tundra and in the Siberian taiga, where a thickness of several feet is common. Permanent snowfields like those of the Alps or the Himalayas are absent because any accumulation of snow is melted with the return of spring and the warm summer. Frozen rivers are thawed, causing a rise in the water level, and extensive floods occur. The lower courses of the Ob, Lena, and Yenisei are marshy and ill-drained. On the other hand, the presence of a thick mantle of snow is not without its blessings. Snow is a poor conductor of heat and protects the ground from the severe cold above, which may be as much as 30 degrees F. Colder, it also provides moisture for the vegetation when the snow melts in spring. When the ground is plowed and the leached, acidic podzolic soil is improved, the continental interiors of the coniferous forest belt are capable of supporting some agriculture. Natural vegetation, no other trees are so well adapted as the conifers to withstand such an inhospitable environment as the Siberian type of climate. The coniferous forest belts of Eurasia and North America are the richest sources of softwood for use in building construction, furniture, matches, paper and pulp, rayon and other branches of the chemical industry. The world's greatest softwood producers are USSR, USA, Canada and the Fennoscandian countries, Finland, Norway and Sweden. In the production of wood pulp, by both chemical and mechanical methods, the USA is the leader. But in the field of newsprint, Canada has outstripped all other producers, accounting for almost half of the world's total annual production. The more accessible coniferous forests have reached the limit of production, but the relatively inaccessible taiga of Siberia will remain the richest reserve of temperate softwood. There are 4 major species in the coniferous forests. 1 pine, e.g. white pine, red pine, Scots pine, jack pine, lodgepole pine. 2 fir, e.g. Douglas fir and balsam fir. 3 spruce. 4 larch. Their presence in pure stands and the existence of only a few species are a great advantage in commercial forest exploitation. Coniferous forests. 1. Coniferous forests are of moderate density. Unlike the equatorial rain forests, which are luxuriant and contain trees of various heights, the coniferous forests are more uniform and grow straight and tall, up to a height of about 100 feet. Where the poleward limit of tree growth is approached, the trees are widely spaced and give way to tundra vegetation, Fig. 152. 2. Almost all conifers are evergreen. The low annual temperature, with more than half the year below the growing point temperature of 43 degrees F, means that evergreens are at an advantage. Growth can begin as soon as growing point is reached in spring. The conifer has a 2-year fructification cycle. The seeds are pollinated in 1 year and dispersed in the following year. There is no annual replacement of new leaves, as in deciduous trees. The same leaf remains on the tree for as long as 5 years. Food is stored in the trunks, and the bark is thick to protect the trunk from excessive cold. 3 conifers are conical in shape. This is another adaptation to survive the subarctic climate. The sloping branches prevent snow accumulation, which may snap the branches. It also offers little grip to the winds. 4 leaves are small, thick, leathery, and needle-shaped. This is to check excessive transpiration. The leaf surface is reduced to the minimum, as transpiration can be quite rapid in the warm summer due to intense continental heating. 5. There is little undergrowth. The podzolized soils of the coniferous forests are poor. They are excessively leached and very acidic. The evergreen leaves provide little leaf fall for humus formation, and the rate of decomposition of the leathery needles in a region of such low temperature is slow. All these factors are deterrents to the growth of much undergrowth. Absence of direct sunlight and the short duration of summer are other contributory factors to a sparse undergrowth. But where trees are widely spaced, near the tree line, heath and tundra plants cover the intervening ground. Besides the continental interiors of the higher latitudes, coniferous forests are also found in other climatic regions wherever altitude reduces the temperature. The conifers are, in fact, the dominant trees of the mountainous districts in both the temperate and tropical countries. But on very steep slopes where soils are immature or non-existent, even the conifer cannot survive. Economic development, the coniferous forest regions of the northern hemisphere are comparatively little developed. In 173 Canada, Eastern Europe, and Asiatic Russia, large tracts old coniferous forests are still untouched. Only in the more accessible areas are the forests cleared law lumbering. The various species of pine, fir, larch, and spruce are felled and transporting to the sawmills for the extraction of temperate soft woods. One here is little agriculture, as few crops can survive in the subarctic climate of these northerly lands. The long, cold winter, the frozen soils, and the low mean annual temperature throughout the year exclude all but the hardiest crops. Only in the more sheltered valleys and the lands bordering the steppes are some cereals, barley, oats, rye, and root crops, potatoes, raised for local needs. Many of the Santoids and Yakuts of Siberia and some Canadians are engaged in hunting, trapping, and fishing. We shall deal with 2 of the major activities in greater detail. Wrapping. Many fur-bearing animals inhabit the northerly lands of Canada and Eurasia. Wherever the cold is keenest, the quality and thickness of the lui also increases. Consequently, the most severe winters produce the finest furs, which fetch the highest prices. In Canada, trappers and hunters, armed with modern automatic rifles, reside in log cabins in the midst of the coniferous forests to track down these animals. Their lives are hard and precarious at times, but the rewards are great if the harvests are good. Muskrat, ermine, mink, and silver fox are the most important fur-bearing animals sought after in Canada. One Hudson Bay Company has many stations scattered in the northern regions to trade in lures with the Canadian trappers and hunters. To ensure a more regular supply of furs, many fur farms have been established in Canada. Animals such as the silver fox and ermine are kept in captivity and skinned when the furs reach a marketable stage. They fetch high prices in sophisticated cities like New York, London, Paris, Rome, and Zurich, where the pelts are processed as attractive fur coats and women's handbags. In Siberia, other fur-bearing animals are trapped. These are squirrels, otters, bears, sables, lynxes, martens, and foxes. As in Canada, fur farming has now replaced hunting old wild animals in many parts of Siberia as the main source of furs. 2. Lumbering. This is probably the most important occupation of the Siberian type of climate. The vast reserves of coniferous forests provide the besides law the lumbering industry. The trees are felled for many purposes. A sawmilling. This processes the logs into sawn timber, plywood, planks, hardwood, and other constructioner woods. Paper and pulp industry. Timber is pulped by both chemical and mechanical means to make wood pulp the raw material for papermaking and newsprint. The development of the printing industry has made paper and pulp indispensable. Canada and USA are leading producers of the world's supplies of newsprint and wood pulp, respectively. A lumberjack uses a power saw to cut up a fallen tree, Quebec. Canada National Film Board of Canada, C, as a fuel. Less than a quarter of the world's saltwood is burnt as fuel because its industrial uses are far more significant. In contrast, almost three-quarters all the world's hardwoods are burnt as fuel, particularly tropical hardwoods where the trees occur in mixed stands. Cl, as an industrial raw material. Limber has a wide range of uses. In Sweden, matches form a major export item. From other temperate countries, timber is used for making furniture, wood carvings, toys, crates and packing cases. From the byproducts all the timber, many chemically processed articles are derived such as rayon turpentine, varnishes, paints, dyes, liquid resins, wood alcohols, disinfectants and cosmetics. Logs are poled into a factory from the Ottawa River, Quebec. Canada National Film Board of Canada of the coniferous forests is characterized by the following features. 1. The conifers are limited in species. Pine, spruce and lyre are the most important in the northern forests, while larch is more predominant in the warmer south. They occur in homogeneous groups and not mixed as in the tropical forests. This not only saves time and costs, but also enhances the commercial value of the felled timber. 2. In these northerly latitudes, agriculture is almost impossible, and lumbering replaces farming in the continental interiors. Even where crops are cultivated, farmers are idle in the winter months and can supplement their income by doing part-time lumbering in the forests, as they do in most parts of Europe. 3. Lumbering is normally carried out in the winter when the sap ceases to flow. This makes telling much simpler. The snow-covered ground also makes logging and haulage a relatively easy job. The logs are dragged to the rivers and float to the sawmills downstream when the rivers thaw in spring. This has greatly assisted the development of the lumbering industry in eastern Canada and Sweden. Unfortunately, over the greater part all Siberia, all the rivers drain poleward into the Arctic Ocean, which is frozen for three-quarters of the year, and there are few sawmills there. With the use of the Northern Sea route, which links Murmansk and Vladivostok via the Arctic Ocean, development is increasing. Cheap hydroelectricity for driving the sawmills is harnessed in the mountainous uplands of North America and Europe and has greatly assisted the lumbering industry. Chapter 24. The Cool Temperate Eastern Margin, Laurentian. Distribution. The cool temperate eastern margin, Laurentian, climate is an intermediate type of climate between the British and the Siberian type of climate. It has features of both the maritime and the continental climates. It is apparent from Fig. 153 that the Laurentian type of climate is found only in two regions. One is northeastern North America, including eastern Canada, northeast USA, i.e. maritime provinces and the New England states, and Newfoundland. This may be referred to as the North American region. The other region is the eastern coastlands, all Asia, including eastern Siberia, North China, Manchuria, Korea, and northern Japan. It may be referred to as the Asiatic region. In the southern hemisphere, this climatic type is absent because only a small section of the southern continents extends south of the latitude of 40 degrees S. The only possible location is in eastern Patagonia, south of Bahia Blanca, lat. 39 degrees S, to Tierra del Fuego, lat. 54 degrees S. But the climatic barrier of the southern Andes is so complete that the westerlies hardly reach Patagonia. The region is subjected to aridity rather than continentality. Its annual precipitation is not more than 10 inches, so that it is rain-shadow desert. Elsewhere in the southern hemisphere, the climate is so equable and the oceanic influence is so profound that neither the continental nor the eastern margin type of climate exists. Climate. The Laurentian type of climate has cold, dry winters and warm, wet summers. Winter temperatures may be well below freezing point and snow lulls to quite a depth. Summers are as warm as the tropics, 70 degrees, 80 degrees F. And if it were not for the Coulino ejects of the offshore cold currents from the Arctic, the summer might be even hotter. Though rain falls throughout the year, there is a distinct summer maximum from the easterly winds from the oceans. Of the annual precipitation of 30 to 60 inches, two-thirds come in the summer. Winter is dry and cold because the winds are dry westerlies that blow out from the continental interiors. We shall now examine in closer detail the variations of the Laurentian type of climate between the North American region and the Asiatic region. The North American region. The most remarkable characteristic of the Laurentian climate of the North American region is its uniformity in precipitation, about 3 to 4 inches monthly, with a late summer maximum. New York in Fig. 154. A has an annual precipitation of 41 inches, with the wettest months in July and August, 4.2 inches each. No month is really dry, and the driest month, November, has 2.5 inches of rain. This uniformity of precipitation is largely due to the Atlantic influence and that of the Great Lakes, Lee W. in U, black square. V increases the moisture content of E. Maley Wak U from the open Atlantic. The prevailing westerlies which penetrate across the Rockies carry depletion over the Great Lakes to the New England states. These winds thus promote wet conditions, especially in winter, which are vital for the agricultural activities of northeastern North America. The meeting of the warm Gulf Stream and the cold Labrador Cuttagny on coastal waters off Newfoundland produces dense mist and fog and gives rise to much precipitation. St. John's, its capital, has as much as 54 inches of annual precipitation. It is said that Newfoundland experiences more drizzles than any other part of the world. In summer, the westerlies bring less depressions and extend their continental influence to the coast. Temperatures are normally high in summer for the latitude. New York has a mean July temperature of 74 degrees F, and sometimes even as high as 90 degrees F. Once, on 7 August 1918, the absolute maximum of 104 EF was reached. Such high temperatures in a cool, temperate maritime region, where the relative humidity is high, can be very trying. Prolonged heat waves cause discomfort and frustration in crowded cities. In winter, the temperature drops and snow falls. New York has 2 months below freezing point. In an annual temperature range of 43 degrees F away from the maritime influence, the cold increases the mean January temperatures for Quebec. Ottawa and Montreal are 10 degrees F, 12 degrees F, and 14 degrees F, respectively. The temperature ranges widen accordingly. The Asiatic region. In contrast, the rainfall distribution of the Asiatic region is far wise. Uniform winters are cold and very dry, while summers are very warm and exceptionally wet. Peking, a typical station of the Laurentian climate in northern China, will bring out these facts very clearly. It has 7 dry months from October to April with a total rainfall of less than 2.1 inches, which is only /1/12 of the annual total of 25 inches. The remaining 5 months receive more than an inch a month, with 9.4 inches in July alone. The rainfall regime is, in fact, similar to that of the tropical 177 F monsoon type in India, where the whole year's rainfall is concentrated in the 3 summer months. The mountainous interior of China has such pronounced continental effects that the intense heating in summer creates a region of extreme low pressure, and moisture-laden winds from the Pacific Ocean and the Sea of Japan blow in as the southeast monsoon. The Laurentian type of climate here is often described as the cool, temperate monsoon climate. It has a very long, cold winter and a big annual range of temperature. The July mean for Peking is 79 degrees F, while that of January is only 24 degrees F. The temperature range is therefore more than 55 degrees F. The dry, cold wind that blows out from the heart all Asia in winter carries fine, yellowish dust and deposits it as a thick mantle of loess in Shanxi, Shenxi and other neighboring provinces at the bend of the Huanghe. Much of the winter precipitation in northern China, Korea and Hokkaido, Japan, is in the form of snow. In the mountainous districts, the snow piles to a depth of 5 to 10 feet. The climate of Japan is modified by its insularity and also by the meeting of warm and cold ocean currents. It receives adequate rainfall from both the southeast monsoon in summer and the northwest monsoon in winter. The latter is the dry, cold wind from mainland Asia. But after crossing the Sea of Japan, it has gathered sufficient moisture to give heavy relief rain or snow on the western coasts of Japan. The rainfall is more evenly distributed, as in Tokyo, with TWO maxima, one in June, the plum rain 6.5 inches, and the other in September, the typhoon rain 9 inches. On the windward slopes of the Japanese Alps on the west, some stations, e.g. Kanazawa, have more than 102 inches of rain, much of it falling as snow. The maritime influence also effectively moderates the temperature range. Tokyo has a range of 40 degrees F, 79 degrees F, in August and F in January, with none of the months below freezing point. The warm Kuroshio has played an important part in making the climate of Japan less extreme. In meeting the cold Yashio from the north, it also produces fog and mist, making North Japan a second Newfoundland. Fishing replaces agriculture as the main occupation in many of the idented coastlands. Natural vegetation, the predominant vegetation, all the Laurentian type of climate, is cool, temperate forest. The heavy rainfall, the warm summers, and the damp air from logs all favor the growth of trees. Generally speaking, the forests tend to be coniferous north of the 50 degrees N, parallel of latitude. The increase in the length and severity of the winter excludes forests that are not adaptable to cold conditions. In the Asiatic region, eastern Siberia and Korea, the coniferous forests are, in fact, a continuation of the great coniferous belt of the taiga. Lumbering has always been a major occupation of this sparsely populated part of Eastern Asia, and timber is a leading export item. Much of the original coniferous forests of fir, spruce and larch have been cleared as a result of lumbering rather than agriculture. Eastern Canada, along the banks of the St. Lawrence River, is the heart of all the Canadian timber and wood nuln industry. HP south of latitude 50 degrees N, the coniferous forests give way to deciduous forests. Oak, beech, maple and birch are the principal trees. Like their counterparts on the western margins, the deciduous forests are fairly open. A long growing season of over 6 months and an adequate supply of moisture from maritime sources encourage rapid growth of ferns and other temperate undergrowth. The occurrence of trees in almost pure stands and the predominance of only a handful of species greatly enhance the commercial value of these forests. As a result, they have been extensively felled for the extraction of temperate hardwood. In many parts of Manchuria, Korea and Japan, the forests have made way for the plough. Both food and cash crops are raised. In Canada, due to the greater reserves of coniferous saltwoods and their overriding importance in industrial uses, the annual production of deciduous hardwood is much less significant. Economic development, lumbering, and its associated timber, paper and pulp industries are the most important economic undertaking. Details of lumbering have already been dealt with in Chapter 22. Agriculture is less important in view of the severity of the winter and its long duration. Fortunately, the maritime influence and the heavy rainfall enable some hardy crops to be raised for local needs. Potatoes thrive over large areas of the podzolized soils. Hardy cereals like oats and barley can be sown and successfully harvested before the onset of the cold winter. A number of other interesting crops are produced in the Asiatic region, such as soya beans. Northern China, Manchuria and Korea are amongst the world's leading producers. Groundnuts, sesame, rape seeds, tung oil and mulberry. In the north, 178 fig. 155 fishing. The North American region, arable farming is not carried out on a sizable scale, except in the more favored localities. Farmers are engaged in dairy farming, hay cultivation, and in mild maritime areas, fruit growing. The fertile Annapolis Valley in Nova Scotia is the world's most renowned region for apples. Fishing is, however, the most outstanding economic activity of the Laurentian climatic regions. Fishing off Newfoundland, the Maritime Provinces and New England, this is one of the world's largest fishing grounds, particularly on the Grand Banks all Newfoundland, Fig. 155. The reasons for its importance are geographical. Fish feed on minute marine organisms, collectively called plankton, which is present in abundance only in shallow waters adjacent to land masses, where sunlight can penetrate through. the gently sloping continental shelves, less than 600 feet deep, which stretch for over 200 miles southeast of Newfoundland and off the coasts of the maritime provinces and New England, contain a rich collection of microscopic plankton. Fish of all types and sizes feed and breed here and support a thriving fishing industry not only in Canada and USA, but also in countries like Norway, France, Britain, Portugal, Denmark, Russia, and Japan, who send fishing fleets to the Grand Banks. As less than 1% of Newfoundland is cultivated, fishing provides employment to almost the entire population. It is not only the chief source of wealth to Newfoundland, but also a major export item of all the maritime provinces. Both pelagic fish, W-fish, live near the surface, and demersal fish, which live near the bottom of shallow seas, are caught. The chief fish caught is cod, which is consumed fresh or dried, salted, smoked, canned, or packed in ice for export to mainland America, Central and South America and Southern Europe. See odd loci oil is exported too. Other fishes caught are haddock, halibut, hake, herring, plaice, and mackerel. Various kinds of fishing craft and techniques are employed to obtain maximum harvests from the sea. Modern trawlers, dragging large conical-shaped nets, and drifters, carrying curtain-like rectangular nets, operate extensively off the Atlantic coasts. They are equipped with radio and radar devices to navigate through the dense fog, avoid collision with icebergs, and also maintain contact with their headquarters on land. Offshore fishermen also use traps, lines, and nets to catch crabs, lobsters, and shrimps for home consumption, and increasingly for export. Further inland, in lakes and rivers, such as the St. Lawrence and the Great Lakes, freshwater fish, e.g. salmon, trout, eels, and sturgeons are caught. In Newfoundland and along the Atlantic coasts are many fishing ports. St. John's, chief port of Newfoundland, with a population of nearing 100,000, is the headquarters of the Grand Banks fishing industries. It also had interests in sealing and whaling, but these have declined. In the fishing ports of Halifax and Yarmouth in Nova Scotia, and in the New England ports are processing plants that cut, clean, salt, pack, or preserve fish for disposal by refrigerated boats, trains, or trucks to all parts of the continent. They are bases for large fleets of trawlers. A modern trawler may well cost anything around $1 million and have men stay on board in floating factories far out at sea for days and even weeks. Fishing in this part of the world is highly specialized and very efficient. In fact, overfishing is a growing problem. The United States government and international fishing bodies are now contemplating strict measures in fish conservation if this major source of protein food is to be sustained for regular supply in the years to come. Fishing off Japan. In the Northwest Pacific, surrounding the islands of Japan, is another major fishing area of the world. Nowhere else in the world are there so many people engaged in fishing as in this part of the North West Pacific. The mountainous nature of Japan and parts of mainland Eastern Asia have driven many to seek a livelihood from the sea. The scarcity of meat. There is little pasture in Japan for livestock farming of any kind, and religious reasons have popularized fish as the principal item of diet and the chief protein food of the Japanese and the Chinese as well. Large quantities of fish and fish products are either canned or preserved for export to neighboring countries. The Japanese also make use of fish wastes, fish meal, and seaweeds as fertilizers in their farms. Japan is one of the few countries that has taken to seaweed cultivation. Coastal farms that are submerged in water grow weeds for sale as fertilizers, chemical ingredient, and even as food. Another interesting aspect of Japanese fishing is pearl culture. The divers of southern Japan dive down into the coastal waters and bring to the surface 180 downloaded from Shashidthaka 23, blow, shellfish called pearl oysters and extract the highly prized pearls for sale as ornaments. The lining of the oyster shells, called mother of pearl, is used for the manufacture of pearl buttons and other decorative articles. As natural pearls in oysters are difficult to obtain in large numbers, the Japanese have begun to breed the young oysters. By injecting tiny seeds into them, the oysters are made to secrete the pearl material, which accumulates to form cultured pearls. These are collected and exported. The Japanese interest in fishing is not confined to their own territorial waters, They venture far and wide into the Arctic, Antarctic, and the Atlantic waters. Large whaling fleets complete with processing plants and experienced crews stay out in the open seas and return only occasionally for refueling or replenishment of fresh provisions. As a nation, Japan accounts for a sixth of the world's total annual fish caught. She is the world's greatest fishing nation today. Her active participation in international fishing enterprises and her advanced fishing techniques speak well of her relentless drive to make good from the seas what she lacks on land. Let us find out why this is possible. One, Japan is not well endowed with natural resources, for as much as 80% of her land is classed non-agricultural. She has to take to the sea if she wants to survive. This has compelled the people to develop the seas, and fishing has for centuries been the traditional occupation of many coastal Japanese. The continental shelves around the islands of Japan are rich in plankton, due to the meeting of the warm Kuroshio and the cold Yashio currents, and provide excellent breeding grounds for all kinds of fish including herring, cod, mackerel, bonito, salmon, sardine and tuna, as well as crabs and lobsters. The indented coastline of Japan provides sheltered fishing ports, calm waters, and safe landing. A cultured pearl farm in Japan places, ideal for the fishing industry. In Hokkaido, where the Laurentian type of climate is too cold for active agriculture, fishing takes first place. Hakodate and Kashiro are large fishing ports, complete with refrigeration facilities. Lack of lowlands and pastures means that only a few animals can be kept to supply meat and other protein food. Fish, in all its varied forms, fresh, canned, dried, frozen, and in the form of fish pastes, fish sauce and spiced condiments takes the place of meat. As Japan's primary source of protein food, there is a great demand for it locally, and for export to other East Asiatic neighbors which lack the techniques of large-scale commercial fishing. 5. The Japanese fishermen began with small fishing boats, using nets, traps, and lines. With the progress made in industries, fishing has also become more scientific, aiming at heavy hauls, high returns, and economy of time, effort, and money. Though 3/4 of the fishermen practice offshore pelagic fishing, either full-time or part-time, in small boats, most of the commercial deep-sea demersal fishing is now highly mechanized. Powered trawlers and modern refrigeration plants backed by sound financial organizations have greatly increased the annual fish yield. Japan is now not only a major producer and exporter of fish and marine products, but also a center for marine and fishing research. Chapter 25. The Arctic or polar climate distribution. The polar type of climate and vegetation is found mainly north of the Arctic Circle in the northern hemisphere. The ice caps are confined to Greenland and to the highlands of these high-latitude regions, where the ground is permanently snow-covered. The lowlands, with a few months ice-free, have tundra vegetation. They include the coastal strip of Greenland, the barren grounds of northern Canada and Alaska, and the Arctic seaboard of Eurasia. Fig. 156. In the southern hemisphere, the virtually uninhabited continent of Antarctica is the greatest single stretch of ice cap, where the layers of permanent ice are as thick as 10,000 feet. Climate temperature. The polar climate is characterized by a very low mean annual temperature, and its warmest month in June seldom rises to more than 50 degrees F. In midwinter, January, temperatures are as low as degrees F, and much colder in the interior. Normally not more than 4 months have temperatures above freezing point. Winters are long and very severe, summers are cool and brief. Within the Arctic and Antarctic circles, there are weeks of continuous darkness. At the North Pole, there are 6 months without light in winter, despite the long duration of sunshine in summer when the sun does not set. Temperatures remain low because the sun is low in the sky, and much of the warmth of its faint rays is either reflected by the ground snow or used up in melting the ice. It has little power left to raise the air temperature. Water in the soil is frozen to great depths, and the summer heat can only thaw the upper 6 inches of the soil. The Kuha remains solidly frozen for all but 4 months, inaccessible to plants. Frost occurs at any time, and blizzards, reaching a velocity of 130 miles an hour, are not infrequent. They can be very hazardous for the polar inhabitants. In coastal districts, Where warmer water meets cold land, thick fogs may develop. They last for days, and in many instances it is not possible to see for more than a few feet. Precipitation. Precipitation is mainly in the form of snow, falling in winter and being drifted about Fig. 156 ice cap and tundra during blizzards. Snowfall varies with locality. It may fall either as ice crystals or large, amalgamated snow flakes. As it takes 10–12 inches of snow to make 1 inch of rain, precipitation in polar regions can be expected to be light, not more than 12 inches a year. Convectional rainfall is generally absent because of the low rate of evaporation and the lack of moisture in the cold polar air. There is normally a summer maximum, and the precipitation is then in the form of rain or sleet. In regions where winds blowing out from the large anticyclones developed over the ice caps are prevalent, rain comes in summer when more evaporation is possible. But in coastal areas, where cyclones are more strongly felt, the tendency is towards a winter maximum, for that is when cyclonic activity is greatest. In such regions, the annual rainfall of 10 to 12 inches for the tundra may be exceeded. Much heavier rainfall has been recorded, especially areas where the cyclones are most frequent. For example, Jan Mayen 7 pn 8 degrees W has 15 inches. Vado 70 degrees NT has 6 inches, and Angmagsalik 66 degrees N 38 degrees W has over 37 inches. Fig. 157 shows the rhythm of temperature and precipitation of a tundra region taken at Upernavik Greenland 72 N 56 degrees W. Its winter temperature Phi. WHL TS warmest month in July is only 41 degrees F, giving an annual range of 49 degrees F. Precipitation is degrees W. Only 9.1 inches, falling mainly in the second nail all the year, both as rain and snow. 184 tundra vegetation. In such an adverse environment as the tundra, few plants survive. The greatest inhibiting factor Js the regions deficient in heat, with a growing season of less than 3 months and the WRNI's month not exceeding 50 degrees F. The tree survival line. There are no trees in the tundra. Such an environment can support only the lowest form of vegetation, mosses, lichens and sedges. Drainage in the tundra is usually poor, as the subsoil is permanently frozen. Ponds and marshes and waterlogged areas are found in hollows. In the more sheltered spots, stunted birches, dwarf willows and undersized alders struggle for a meager existence. Climatic conditions along the coastal lowlands are little more favorable. Here are found some hardy grasses and the reindeer moss, which provide the only pasturage for the herbivorous animals like reindeer. In the brief summer, when the snows melt and the days are warmer and longer, berry-bearing bushes and Arctic flowers bloom. Though short-lived, they brighten the monotonous tundra landscape into Arctic prairies. In the summer, the tundra is full of activities. Birds migrate north to prey on the numerous insects which emerge when the snow thaws. Mammals like the wolves, foxes, muskox, Arctic hare and lemmings also live in tundra regions. Human activities of the tundra are largely confined to the coast. Where plateaus and mountains increase the altitude, it is uninhabitable, for these are permanently snow-covered. The few people who live in the tundra live a semi-nomadic life and have to adapt themselves to the harsh environment. In Greenland, northern Canada and Alaska, 5 the Eskimos, numbering less than 28,000 today. They used to live as hunters, fishers and food gatherers, but in recent years more and more of them are settling in permanent huts. The polar Eskimos, lie Aeon Thule in northwest Greenland, still lead an uncertain life, not very much different from their forefathers. The seasonal changes in climate necessitate a nomadic way of life. During winter, they live in compact igloos, and in summer when they move out to hunt they pitch portable tents of skins by the side of streams. Their food is derived from fish, seals, walruses and polar bears. Other Eskimos hunt caribou, the name given to reindeer in America, and other animals to secure a steady supply of their daily meat, milk, fat, skins and bones. In the last 50 years, through their contact with the Europeans, the way of life of the Eskimos has undergone tremendous changes. Coastal villages have permanent wooden houses complete with modern facilities. speedboats are replacing frail kayaks. Deadly rifles instead of traditional harpoons are used to track down animals and seals. Fur-bearing animals are being reared on a commercial scale, and fishing, too, is being commercialized. In some more accessible parts of Canada and Alaska, schools have been established, and the Eskimo children are being taught the skills which will allow them to fit into the modern way of life. In the Eurasian tundra are other nomadic tribes, such as the Lapps of northern Finland and Scandinavia, the Samoyeds of Siberia, from the Ural Mountains and the Yenisei Basin, the Yakuts from the Lena Basin, and the Koryaks and Chukchi of northeastern Asia. They wander with their herds of reindeer across the Eurasian tundra where there are pastures. Many of them have taken to a more settled life. In the USSR, large farms have been established for raising reindeer and for breeding fur-bearing animals. The importance and recent development of the Arctic region, once regarded as completely useless, is now of some economic importance. Apart from the efforts of the various governments in assisting the advancement of the Arctic inhabitants, the Eskimos, Lapps, Samoyeds, etc., new settlements have sprung up because of the discovery of minerals. Gold is mined in Alaska, nickel near Petsamo. USSR, petroleum in the Kenai Peninsula. Alaska, and copper at the Rankin Inlet. Canada. Coal has been mined in Spitsbergen for a long time, and also in Alaska. With the declining reserves of iron ore around Lake Superior, the Great Lakes industrial concerns are using more and more iron from large iron ore deposits in Labrador. New railway finds have been constructed to bring the ores to the St. Lawrence River for subsequent shipment to the major industrial districts. Rich deposits all iron ores at Kiruna and Gallivare in Sweden have made it possible for Sweden to enjoy a prosperous export trade in iron and steel and other metallurgical products. With the establishment of ports on the Arctic seaboard of Eurasia, it is now possible to ship timber and fur from Siberia. Though the ports, such as Igaka at the mouth of the Yenisei, are not ice-free, modern icebreakers keep the passage open most of the time. On the Arctic lowlands, where the growing season is lengthened by warm currents or higher temperatures, experiments have been carried out to devise varieties of hard cereals for local needs. It may not be long before the tundra is brought under greater agricultural, especially pastoral, use. The healthy air and its preservative qualities, it is practically germ-free, are factors worth consideration for future colonization scientists, meteorologists and explorers lived in the Arctic and Antarctica, making studies of their geology, weather conditions, plant and animal life that will be of great significance in years to come. The borderlands between the taiga and the tundra. Elizabeth Mayer.